The message arrived just after midnight, lighting up Daniel's phone in the dark room. He was half asleep, his mind drifting when the screen buzzed again. He reached for it without thinking, expecting work or a wrong number. What he saw pulled him fully awake. The words were soft, familiar, and personal. Too personal. They spoke of missing someone, of a shared moment, of a promise to meet again soon. The name at the top of the screen made his stomach tighten. Mark, his best friend. The message was clearly meant for Alina, Daniel's wife. Daniel sat up slowly, his heart pounding in a way that felt loud in the silence. He read the message again, hoping he had misunderstood. But there was no mistake. The tone, the warmth, the certainty, it all pointed to something that had been going on for a while. His hands trembled, but his face stayed still. In that moment, the world he trusted cracked without making a sound. He looked over at Alina sleeping beside him. Her face was calm, peaceful, untouched by the storm inside him. For years, he had believed in her honesty without question. They had built a life that others admired. Friends called them the perfect couple. Mark had been part of that picture from the start. He was always around, always helpful, always loyal. Or so Daniel thought. Daniel didn't wake her. He didn't shout or demand answers. Instead, he lay back down, staring at the ceiling as memories rushed through his mind. Every dinner they shared, every trip they took, every moment Mark laughed. A little too hard at Elena's jokes now felt different. The betrayal didn't feel sharp at first, felt heavy, like a slow weight pressing down on his chest. Morning came too quickly. Daniel moved through the house like a stranger. Alina kissed his cheek, smiling as she always did, asking if he slept well. He nodded, forcing a small smile in return. The lie tasted bitter. As she left for work, Daniel stood at the door and watched her walk away, wondering how long she had been living a double life. At work, Daniel couldn't focus. His mind replayed the message again and again. He wanted to confront Mark immediately, to hear him deny it, to prove it was all some strange mistake. But a quiet voice inside him warned against acting too fast. He needed to understand the truth fully. He needed to see how deep the betrayal went. Over the next few days, Daniel watched closely. He noticed things he had once brushed aside. Lena guarded her phone more carefully. She smiled at messages she didn't explain. Mark avoided eye contact when they spoke, his words rushed and awkward. Each small detail added another crack too. The picture Daniel once trusted. The pain grew, but so did Daniel's control. He began to save messages when he could, noting dates, times, and patterns. He didn't spy openly, he simply paid attention. The truth revealed itself piece by piece, and each piece hurt more than the last. There was no doubt now. The betrayal was real. At night, Daniel lay awake, his thoughts racing. Anger rose in him, strong and demanding. He imagined confronting them, imagined the shock on their faces, imagined the relief of letting his rage spill out. But another feeling followed close behind. Fear. Fear of losing everything he had built. Fear of becoming someone ruled by anger. Daniel remembered how Mark had stood beside him at his wedding, smiling with pride. He remembered how Alina had promised honesty above all else. Those memories clashed with the present, creating a deep confusion that left Daniel exhausted. He wasn't just losing trust in them, he was losing trust in his own judgment. One evening, Mark invited Daniel out for coffee. The invitation felt forced, almost planned. Daniel agreed, curious to see how Mark would act. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the air thick with unspoken tension. Mark talked about work, about small problems, about nothing that mattered. His voice shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. Daniel studied him carefully. This was the man he had trusted with his life, the man who knew his weaknesses, his hopes, his fears. Daniel realized then that betrayal didn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it came from those closest to you, wearing familiar faces. When they parted, Mark clapped Daniel on the shoulder, his smile tight. Daniel felt a surge of anger so strong he had to clench his jaw to keep it in check. He walked away without looking back, his steps fast and deliberate. The desire for revenge began to take shape, quiet but powerful. At home, Alina acted as if nothing was wrong. She talked about plans for the weekend, about future trips, about growing old together. Each word felt like a test Daniel had to pass. He responded carefully, matching her tone, hiding the storm inside him. He wondered if she felt any guilt, or if she believed she could keep the truth hidden forever. Daniel's thoughts turned darker. He imagined exposing them, letting everyone see who they really were. He imagined the relief of watching their carefully built images fall apart. The idea brought him a strange sense of control, a feeling he hadn't had since the night he read that message. But with that feeling came doubt. Would revenge truly heal him? Or would it pull him deeper into pain? He struggled with the questions, knowing there were no easy answers. Every option carried a cost. As days turned into weeks, the tension grew. Daniel lived two lives at once. On the outside, he was calm, steady, unchanged. Inside, he was restless, driven by a need to reclaim his dignity. The betrayal had taken something from him, and he wanted it back. Late one night, Daniel sat alone in the living room, the house silent around him. He looked at the photos on the wall, smiling faces, shared moments, proof of a life that now felt distant. He realized then that revenge was not just about hurting those who hurt him, was about being seen, about making the truth impossible to ignore. Daniel's life settled into a strange routine. On the surface, nothing had changed. He woke early, went to work, shared meals, and spoke with calm control. Inside, his thoughts moved fast and sharp. Every moment felt like preparation for something coming. He was no longer shocked. That phase had passed. Now he was alert, focused, and restless. He began to think carefully instead of emotionally. Rage still rose, but he learned to push it down and replace it with patience. He knew that quick actions would only weaken him. What hurt most was not just the betrayal, but the ease with which it continued. Alina laughed, planned, and touched his arm as if nothing stood between them. Mark sent friendly messages, acting normal, pretending loyalty still existed. Their comfort fed Daniel's anger. At night, Daniel replayed every memory, not to suffer, but to understand. He searched for signs he had missed. He wondered when it started, who crossed the line first, and how long they had both looked him in the eye while hiding the truth. These questions kept him awake, but they also sharpened his thinking. He was no longer confused. He was learning. Daniel started writing things down, not as evidence for others, but as clarity for himself. Dates, places, changes in behavior. It helped him feel grounded. Each detail removed doubt. The story was clear now. There was no misunderstanding, no excuse. Just choice after choice made without him. Still, his heart was not at peace. Some mornings he felt strong, convinced revenge was the only way to restore balance. Other mornings he felt tired, wondering if letting go would hurt less. The struggle exhausted him. He was torn between wanting justice and wanting peace. Mark, meanwhile, was unraveling. He grew quieter, more distant. Guilt followed him like a shadow. In his own mind, he tried to justify everything. He told himself that feelings were not planned, that Daniel had changed, that Alina deserved attention. These thoughts helped him sleep, but they did not bring peace. Deep down, he feared exposure more than regret. Alina carried her own conflict. She noticed Daniel's silence, his distant eyes, the way he listened more than he spoke. She sensed something shifting, something dangerous. Fear crept in, but she pushed it away. She told herself that as long as Daniel said nothing, everything could still be fixed. Silence became her hope. Daniel saw this fear and stored it away. He didn't enjoy watching it grow, but it reminded him that they were not as calm as they pretended to be. That knowledge gave him a sense of power he hadn't felt since the betrayal. One evening, Daniel attended a small gathering with friends, including Mark and Alina. The room was warm, filled with laughter and casual talk. Daniel observed quietly. He noticed how Mark avoided Elena's eyes when Daniel was near. He noticed how Elena stiffened when Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. The tension was invisible to others, but loud to him. As the night went on, Daniel felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not relief, but sadness. He realized how much had already been lost. Trust had vanished. Love had been damaged beyond repair. Revenge could not bring those things back. It could only add more pain. Still, the idea of doing nothing felt unbearable. He didn't want to be the man who swallowed betrayal and smiled through it. He wanted acknowledgement. He wanted truth spoken aloud. The question was how. Daniel began to imagine different paths. One led to public exposure, forcing shame into the open. Another led to private confrontation, controlled and quiet. Each path had a cost. Public revenge would hurt deeply, but it would also bind him to the drama forever. Private truth would be cleaner, but would it feel like justice? Days passed as Daniel weighed these options. His mind moved quickly, testing outcomes, measuring consequences. He spoke less and listened more. Every word from Alina felt rehearsed. Every message from Mark felt fragile. They were waiting for something, though they didn't know what. One night, Alina asked him directly if something was wrong. Her voice was careful, almost afraid. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. He saw the woman he once loved, and the stranger she had become. He told her he was just tired. The lie came easily, too easily. That realization disturbed him. Later, alone, Daniel felt the weight of that moment. He understood then that the longer he waited, the more he changed. Desire for revenge was shaping him, hardening parts of him he once valued. This awareness did not erase the anger, but it added urgency. He needed to act, not to punish, but to stop the slow damage within himself. Mark tried to reach out again, suggesting another meeting, another casual talk. Daniel agreed. This time, he was ready. Not to accuse, but to observe. They sat in silence, longer than before. Mark finally spoke, his words nervous and scattered. Daniel listened, saying little. The imbalance unsettled Mark. He realized he no longer held control. As Daniel left, he knew the moment was approaching. The planning phase was ending. The internal struggle had reached its peak. Revenge stood before him, offering release. Forgiveness stood beside it, offering freedom. Neither choice felt easy. Both demanded loss. That night, Daniel made his decision. Not fully, but enough to move forward. He would confront the truth directly. No games, no cruelty, no public spectacle. Just honesty placed where it could not be denied. What followed would depend on their response and on his strength. The room was quiet, too quiet, as Daniel waited. The light above the table was steady, revealing nothing and hiding nothing. He had chosen this place because it felt neutral, empty of memories. When Alina walked in, her steps slowed. She sensed the weight in the air. Mark followed behind her, tense and unsure. They took their seats without being told. No one spoke at first. Daniel placed his phone on the table. He didn't look angry. He looked calm, which frightened them more. He began to speak, his voice steady and clear. He talked about trust, about loyalty, about how silence can hurt more than words. He didn't accuse, he didn't shout. He told the truth as he had learned it, piece by piece, without emotion. Each sentence landed hard. Elena's face drained of color. Mark stared at the table, his hands clenched. When Daniel finished, the silence returned, heavier than before. Lena tried to speak, but her words fell apart. She cried softly, offering reasons, not excuses, but Daniel didn't interrupt. He listened, not because he needed answers, but because he wanted the moment to be complete. Mark finally looked up. His voice shook as he admitted what he had done. He spoke of confusion, of feelings he hadn't planned. He said he never meant to hurt Daniel. The words sounded weak in the open air. Daniel felt a brief surge of anger, sharp and hot, but it passed quickly. He realized then that hearing the truth didn't bring relief. It brought clarity. The moment of decision arrived quietly. Daniel could push further. He could threaten exposure, demand apologies, force humiliation. The power was his. He felt it clearly. But as he looked at them, broken and afraid, something inside him shifted. Revenge suddenly felt small, like a short victory with a long cost. Daniel stood, said he was ending the marriage and the friendship. No anger, no drama, just an ending. He told them he wanted distance, not destruction. He wanted his life back, not their suffering. With that, he turned and walked out, leaving them alone with the truth. Outside, the air felt cold and clean. Daniel took a deep breath. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. The choice he had made was heavier than revenge, but it felt right. He had faced them without becoming what he hated. That mattered more than any moment of satisfaction. The days that followed were difficult. Daniel moved into a small apartment, quiet and empty. Nights were long. Mornings were slow. Grief came in waves, sometimes calm, sometimes overwhelming. He missed the life he thought he had. He missed the man he was before the betrayal. But slowly, something new began to form. He stopped checking his phone for messages that would never come. He stopped replaying conversations in his head. The anger faded, replaced by sadness, then acceptance. He realized revenge had promised strength, but peace delivered it. Alina reached out once, asking to talk. Daniel declined. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-respect. Mark sent a message apologizing again. Daniel didn't respond. Silence was no longer weakness. It was boundary. Weeks turned into months. Daniel rebuilt his routine. He focused on work, on health, on quiet moments of reflection. He learned that healing wasn't loud or dramatic, was steady and patient. Some days were still hard, but they no longer controlled him. One evening, Daniel walked past a cafe where he had once met Mark. He paused, feeling a faint ache. But it passed. The memory no longer held power. He understood then that revenge would have kept him tied to the past. Walking away had set him free. Daniel didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as someone who had been tested and had chosen not to let bitterness win. The betrayal had changed him, but it had not destroyed him. In the end, he learned that revenge asks you to stay in pain longer than necessary. Healing asks you to let go. The story ends not with applause or triumph, but with quiet strength. Daniel chose dignity over damage, truth over spectacle, and peace over payback. And in that choice, he found something far more lasting than revenge.